Right, we're going to application 4C in Sproston, land adjacent to 158 Blue Ball Lane, Sproston. We have Andrew Parnell. If you'd like to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we have before us, as Chair just said, land adjacent 158 Blue Ball Lane in Sproston for the erection of 4 dwellings with garages, associated works, including creation of access and landscaping. So to give you some context to the site, the application site is set here on this corner, effectively, with Sproston Sports and Social Club just almost adjacent, opposite, and has Sproston Garden Centre to the south, and it's just to the side of 2 dwellings which are already accessed off of that side of Blue Ball Lane. And this slide shows it in a bit more context of Sproston itself, with just down from where the Tesco and Lidl are, just further afield. And then this shows it just in a bit more detail, so you can see Sproston Garden Centre just to the south of your slide there, and the Sports and Social Club opposite with their access off of the side of Blue Ball Lane as well. The proposal itself seeks the creation of 4 new dwellings. So this is the site location plan showing where those 4 dwellings will be located, and showing at the northwest of the site where the 2 existing dwellings are off that access already, and it's just shown on that red dotted line where the existing access is. This proposal seeks to close that existing access and create a new access for all of the dwellings shown there, effectively, with that turning head at the end where plot 3 is at the bottom at the south of the site there. I would note as well there are a number of protected trees on the site there, which are shown as majoritively remaining on the site as part of the proposals, and the applicant has submitted a arboricultural impact assessment to support the application as well. So each plot itself has its own distinct house type, so I'll just cycle through these. So this is plot 1, so one of the group of the 2 detached dwellings which are opposite the existing dwellings on the site. And again, plot 2 is the other one of these. Plot 3 is the furthest detached to the south, and is set away from the other properties. And then plot 4 is the one to the northwest of the site, to the northwest of the site itself. I would note as well there has been a change to the existing site plan, so I'll just cycle back to that, which was mentioned on the update sheet itself. So the garage has been moved from the eastern side of the site where it was previously to the western side, so you can see that there on the slides. The garage has been moved just to reduce the impact on the protected trees which are to the east of the site, and with informal consultation with our tree officer, he's satisfied with that as an improvement, as a change, as part of the proposals. So just to run through the considerations briefly from my report. So I'm sure as members will be aware, it's been called in for highway reasons by the local member. It's noted the local highway authority haven't objected to the principle of the access on highway safety grounds, and I've got a number of slides just showing, kind of taking you for a walk around the site, just to show you kind of where that access sits. There was comments from the local highway authority which did seek some further improvement works. I would note the improvement works they originally requested have already been completed by the local highway authority to widen that access round the front of that corner. They suggested an exchange to improve some further part of the footpath network to widen that further to the south. It's our assessment of that suggested condition that's not reasonable for the applicant to provide that as part of this development. So that's where we are with that, effectively. I'd note as well from the recommendation, it's recommended to delegate to the Assistant Director of Place to to approve the application subject to mitigation for nutrient neutrality and GIRAM. So those matters are still outstanding, but they're seeking to provide credits for nutrient neutrality from a credit provider, and they're willing to enter into an agreement to play the GIRAMs as well, but they want to move this application through committee first before that. So just to walk you through the site itself. So this is the existing site, so looking into the site itself from the end of the existing road effectively in the site itself. So this is looking south, so you can see it's quite heavily tree covered at the moment. This is the existing semi-detached dwellings which are on the site currently, so they'll be the ones opposite this development. Again, this is looking north, so northeast, where the access is going to come through effectively, where that new access is going to come through. This shows the existing access, which will be closed off. So this is adjacent to the side of those two dwellings currently, and what their existing access is. And then this is looking out from that existing access across the road, across Blue Ball Lane. So as I said, I'm going to take you for a little walk around the surrounding area. So this is looking down at the bend effectively, so you can see the blue sign just to the end there, which is the Sprouston Sports and Social Club sign on that corner. So this is looking effectively southeast up towards where the dwellings will be on the right hand side, kind of across from there. This is looking down towards where the Tesco is, so looking away from the site, so that further effectively part of the transport network further down leading to the junction. And again, this is me approximately looking the other way back towards where the site will be on the right hand side and to where that bend then sweeps round to the right. This is effectively looking opposite the existing access, so the new access will be further along from here, effectively, and you can see there's an existing access that I'm stood in the opposite side of the road, the existing access that's proposed to be blocked up, and then where that new access is going to go, and then the Sports and Social Club access on the other side. And again, this is me the other side of the road looking towards the Sports and Social Club as we move further down Blue Ball Lane itself. And again, this is me looking opposite to that existing access that the Sports and Social Club have onto Blue Ball Lane from there as well. And then I've moved a little bit further down and jumped across the side of the road again. Stood next to that sign where the Sprouston Sports and Social Club is, so you can see where the existing footpath is and has been widened up to, and then the footpath then narrows down from there before it crosses across to the other side of the road on Blue Ball Lane a little bit further down, which you can see in a little bit more detail here. So that's where it crosses across there. And then this is stood a little bit further down, further still, so you can see the narrow footpath on the application side of the road. On the application side of the road, as that narrows down, and then you can see the access a little bit further down, and Sprouston Garden Centre is just on your right a little bit further down from here. So this is looking approximately backwards from where I was previously, back towards where the site is and again you can see the Sprouston Sports and Social Club sign again on that corner. And again, this is approximately from where I'm crossing the road in the middle there, which again shows that access and that further wider context view up towards where the application site is, up towards where that bend is. And again, this is me stood approximately looking the other way, so just showing that context to where the garden centre is, and their access just further off. And just for a little bit more context, this is the development just to the northeast of Blue Ball Lane, which has been building out. So just for a little bit more context on that northeast side of the road there. So that brings me to effectively the end of my presentation. So it's recommended to delegate to the Director of Place to approve subject to those conditions, subject to the conditions and to the required mitigation in terms of nutrient neutrality and GIRAMs being secured. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I just go back to one of the photos? Can you just show me where the new access is going to be?
So probably best one here. So it's going to come through effectively dead opposite here. It's quite hard to see because it's all hedged effectively, but it's going to come out approximately on that bend there. I would note, yeah, it's probably on the site. The site plan probably shows it best. The site plan probably shows it best, so it's going to come out just before the bend itself. So that probably is the best illustration that we've got. So it's going to come down slightly further down, but you can see the existing sports and social club access, and the visibility displays are shown on there in purple, if you can just about see that. Might not come out as well on there, but the plan does show the visibility displays, and I'd note that the highways haven't got an objection in principle to the new access.
Because there are a tremendous number of trees, but the verdure, I think, has been increased, hasn't it? Which is important. But I also understand that there looked here to me as if there was going to be an access just opposite Laundry Lane in front of where the two houses are, but that I understood by talking with Ben that has been closed now. There's only just the one main access, and you show it on here, you know, like this, in a very sensible outlook, because you do need very good access to both sides as you come to go out of that access, because it is very busy, and with the bend and the traffic. But I gather that is the position now, because I can see on the slide there, there's no other, there's just the one access, isn't there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to jump in slightly. Andrew, can you just go back to the photograph of the existing entrance? I think that'll help.
This one?
Yeah, that's a good one. So you can see that is the existing access, the existing vehicular access into the two cottages at the moment that are there.
Yeah.
That would be closed as part of this application, and you can see at the moment that's not a very good access. That access in terms of visibility is really poor. You've got visibility one way where you've got that massive hedge, so you haven't really got any visibility. You've got visibility the other way where the hedge continues on, you can't quite see it from the photograph, but it's the same sort of size of hedge. So actually you have to creep out a bit already to be able to see both ways, whereas the proposal takes it, yes, it does take it closer to the bend, but if we go back to the site plan, please, Andrew, that'd be really helpful. You'll see it takes it closer to the bend, but what it does is two things. One, it adds a proper bell mouth into that junction. It will look to, so it means that if you can see the dotted line on there, the actual visibility comes from further out, so ahead of the hedge. And then you've got visibility in both directions now that you didn't have before.
That's right.
And the visibility to the south, yes, it's on a bend, but it's across open land, which is just grass. And so you've got significantly better visibility than you did on the existing access. So we're comfortable, along with highways, that not only are we allowing a visibility display that would satisfy the requirements of this application, but we're actually making the situation for the existing two properties better than it is now.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
I think it would have been handy to have a photo of where that was, and we could see in the photo. Looking at the plan, it looks fine, but if you actually see it in the ground, it'd be maybe a bit clearer. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Peter.
Yeah. Well, it's not whether they're doing observations just now. Laundry Lane opposite that used to be the access to White House Farm, I believe. Now, is that used to be used quite a lot, didn't it? I don't know whether it is now, whether there's a new access. They have a new access, so I
Yes.
don't quite know what that's used for, but looking at those tyre marks on the road, it looks as if it's still in use. But this is a very busy road. I mean, it's a main artery road in Sproston and links to a very, very large and well-used supermarket, Tesco's. The amount of traffic on there, I think it's amazing that highways haven't made more observations of the new access on the corner. I think that's potentially lethal to have it there, in my opinion. I also have a concern about the trees which are on site, which have got subject to some TPOs and likely to be lost. I wonder if there's any mitigation being put in place for that. Thank you.
Andrew, just want to pick up on the trees?
Are there TPOs on the tree?
Yeah, so there are TPOs on the trees. We're only, the applicant hasn't submitted an updated AIA, but now we've moved that garage away from that side where the group are, because some of those were proposed to be removed. That takes the impact away from them. So there's only actually one tree, which is a category U tree that will be lost. That will be lost kind of to the development. So that will keep the majority, and we've got conditions in terms of ecological. The ecological side of things, and we're comfortable in terms of that.
I can pick up again on the highway side of things, but I'm pretty much going to say the same thing, but I'm going to prefix it with the fact that we've got no objections from the Highways Authority. So they've considered it. They obviously consider highway safety as one of the most important parts of the job they do, along with all the other technical aspects. They don't object to the scheme, but then to reiterate what I've just said, I honestly think we're going to make the situation better than it is already for those two properties.
Just the secretary, please. Have we had any representations from the people who live in those two semis already on site?
So I think we did have one public comment, which I think is referenced in the report, and we had a number of public comments themselves. I think we had 10 public comments in total, of which were objecting to the proposals.
Okay, Paul.
Sorry, quick question. Is there a section 106 with this development? Was it? No?
No, I don't think it would be necessary to have an S106 for this level, because it's 4 dwellings, so there's not the requirement for affordable or anything like that kicks in at like 5 dwellings. So it was originally submitted as 5. If that were the case, then we would look at that affordable requirement. As it's now 4, there's not a requirement for that.
Because I was just worried, not worried, I was just concerned about sustainable transport. What, if any, I know that you mentioned about pathways, and one of them seemed quite narrow. Are you happy that there's sufficient pedestrian access and, cycle path access to this site?
Yeah, so we've looked at the footpath around the site. There is footpaths all along the frontage of the site. I think it's probably fair to say it does narrow to the south of the site. I think that's where we get into that balance of, if we were to require the widening of that, we would probably need to take out additional trees along there. But there is along the frontage of the site, and where there is actually quite a good footpath, and obviously majority of connections are going to be going sort of north, and that's where the better footway is. We have to then balance anything additional to the south, so there is an existing footpath all the way to the south. Again, sort of potential loss of trees if we were to require the widening of it, and also look at the conditions tests and whether it's reasonable to require that for a development of 4 houses. And I think that's where officers have taken that balanced view, that actually based on the provision that there is, we consider that is an acceptable level of provision, and it wouldn't be reasonable to ask this applicant to do those additional works, because they wouldn't directly relate to the requirements of this site.
Okay, we've got no speakers, so we'll just go to general discussion, please.
I'm happy to propose.
Okay. All those in favour, please? All those against? Thank you. It's been carried. Thank you. Right, next application is Upton, Horse's Head Upton. And we have, who do we have for this one? We have Claire. Oh, Julie, sorry. Sorry. Sorry, Julie.
Right, thank you, Chair. So this is an application for the demolition of redundant agricultural buildings and the erection of 2 new dwellings and garages at Broadland Farm, Horse's Head, Upton. From the application, you can see that the application site is on the edge of the village of Upton, with further development further south, Poplar Farm and various other development there. So it's right on the edge of the settlement. For a wider view of the village, you can see where the site is located to the south-east of the village. There are services and facilities within the village itself in terms of a community shop, pub, a village hall, and various things like that. This is the proposed site layout. It shows 2 dwellings and 2 carports with separate accesses and the inclusion of the agricultural land to form gardens. This is a front elevation of the proposal. Plot 1 is a primarily single storey with a small section of accommodation in the roof space of the first dwelling. The second plot is a 2-storey property with single storey elements and the garaging within the central location within the site. A floor plan that shows plot 1 and the garaging. This plot 1 is the first floor element of plot 1. This is the plot 2, the 2-storey. As you can see, it's got various elements of single-storey construction. And again, plot 2 showing the ground floor floor plans. So some context, this is the existing site showing the existing agricultural buildings looking from the east towards the village. In the distance you can just about make out the buildings of the care home, which is a 2-storey building, and in the distance you can also see some various, the edge of Upton, the various buildings along there. This here is the care home. This is one barn, there's a separate barn here and a small outbuilding as well. Those will be demolished and be replaced. So directly into the site you can see the context of the existing buildings with the existing dwelling or the care home to the west, and you can appreciate the openness of the site to the north and the east, although bearing in mind that just across the road on Horse's Head there is a separate dwelling, as you could see from the site location plan. Again, another view of the buildings that will be demolished and replaced. There's open fronted construction with a timber, or not a timber roof, a steel roof, brick buildings, timber buildings, a sort of a range of different pole barns, and just a few more photographs of what the barns look like at the moment. And a few more. Again, you can see on the top ones that you can see the care home in the background overlooking the site, and a view from the west looking towards the build from Horse's Head. And I'll take you back to the actual layout that's there. So the development is following a Class Q application. So the issues for consideration are what the principle of the development, impacts upon the character and appearance of the area, neighbour amenity, highways and parking. So in terms of the principle, the buildings already have consent for conversion to 2 dwellings under Class Q prior approval, which was granted last year or the year before and could be implemented. Therefore, the principle of residential development has already been a proposal for the demolition of the existing buildings and construction of 2 detached houses and detached garage. Keeps going off, doesn't it? Yeah. Proposal for the demolition of the existing buildings and construction of 2 detached houses and detached garages has keep going. Okay. Therefore, where are we? Has subsequently been submitted using the Class Q as a fallback position. As set out in the report, in order to meet the fallback test, the development must be comparable with the Class Q approved scheme. Although the number of dwellings is in accordance with the approved scheme and the position of the new dwellings on the site is roughly similar to the existing buildings, the appearance and scale of the dwellings will be different to the Class Q. In this case, it's relevant to consider whether the site is appropriate for new residential development, which is outside but immediately adjacent to the edge of Upton. Policy 7.5 of the GNLP allows for self-build housing adjacent to settlements, but these properties are not being proposed as self-build. Policy 7.4 of the GNLP allows for some development on unconsented sites which support local services as part of village clusters, which could apply to this site. Upton is a village with some facilities it could support. It is also important to consider the current lack of housing land supply due to in most part to the nutrient neutrality issues affecting the district. This is outside the nutrient neutrality catchment and would deliver 2 new houses. Because of the location of the site and the current housing land shortfall in combination with other policies in the local plan that encourage development and the fact that there is a Class Q approval, the principle of development of the site, contrary to any specific policy in the local plan, is considered justified. In terms of the design and character of the area, the garden area will not extend much beyond what is already defined curtilage of the existing buildings, any further into the open countryside, although the dwellings will be adjacent to open farmland. In relation to the impact upon the character and appearance of the site, when viewed in the context of nearby properties and the wider countryside, this will be largely unaffected. Although the design and scale of the new dwellings is different to the existing buildings on the site, these have been sympathetically designed in keeping with the rural character of the adjoining fields and open countryside. With regards to highway safety and parking, the proposal creates 2 new accesses in lieu of the existing field accesses, and there is sufficient on-site parking and turning space to meet highway requirements. The Highway Authority has not objected. In considering neighbours, the dwellings are located to the east of the nearest neighbour, which is a care home. First floor windows are proposed in the elevations facing the road and to the rear overlooking the fields, but not in the direction of the neighbours. So to conclude, the principle of use of the building as a dwelling has already been established with the issue of the Class Q prior approval. Although the fallback position is not relevant in this case, other policies in the local plan would permit housing in this location. The design is considered appropriate for the location and encompassing the curtilage of the existing building to form the garages. The gardens for the new properties are considered to have negligible impacts outside the site and no significant impacts for the appearance of the wider countryside. The position of first floor windows in combination with existing boundary screening and distance between new and existing properties will prevent any significant loss of privacy for neighbours. The proposal provides adequate access, parking and manoeuvring space to meet highway safety and parking standards. The recommendation, therefore, is to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions? No? Or do you want to go straight to general discussion?
Are we talking about having air source heat pumps on site as opposed to provision of gas or anything like that?
We've got no speakers, so we'll go to general discussion. Nothing to say? It's pretty straightforward, I think, this one.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Two houses.
Yeah.
Adjacent to others.
Eleanor, would you like to say something?
Yes, I mean, I don't have any objections to it. I mean, the buildings have got existing approval for conversion, so the principle of development is there. And I just have some concerns because it is contrary to the development plan. And my general concerns are about the ability for applications to come forward for conversion of buildings which were previously for agricultural use. They come forward for conversion under Class Q, which is fair enough, obviously that's permitted development, but then they can come back later for planning approval. I mean, this development is much bigger than was approved under Class Q. So although, as I said, I don't have an objection to it, I do have a general concern about, are we likely to see this happening quite a lot because we no longer have a 5-year housing land supply. It is harder to perhaps refuse these sorts of applications when they come in. It's just that really the scale is considerably larger than would have been permitted under the Class Q. But it's just really to make that point. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just come back, but I think I'm only going to reinforce the point you're making, Eleanor, which is that we are in a position at the moment where we don't have 5-year on supply. Normally, the fallback position, as Julie's explained well, would be that you'd expect buildings of a comparable scale and size, albeit there would always be a little bit where you might go a little bit bigger. But we are faced with the point of not having 5 years on supply. So yes, I think the answer is in certain circumstances where they can be accommodated, we will probably see more like this. But we will then have to consider other things in the mix, the design of them, actually the scale. In some locations won't make sense to go much bigger than they are. So each one will consider on its merits, and actually each one won't be like this either. You know, this one is on the edge of a village. Some of them won't be, and it is close to the services. Often they won't be. So each one will be a bit different that we'll consider, but you might see more coming forward.
I think as far as I'm concerned, there's 2 new houses and there's improvement of the site. So are we happy to go to vote? Yeah, all those in favour, please. That's unanimous, thank you. Right, we have Blowfield, land west of Woodbastwick Road, and we have Peter coming for a presentation.
Right, thank you, Chair. So, for the last item, we've got land west of Woodbastwick Road, Blowfield. So this application, we've gone around in circles a little bit with regard to policy. So I'll probably set that context out initially. So the proposal is for 3 self-build dwellings, initially submitted as 5, but considered from a policy's perspective to be in a location that would comply with policy 7.5 of the GNLP with regard to self-build, which limits it to 3. So the application was revised down to 3 to meet the requirements of that policy. You'll see in my report that that's the way I've assessed the proposal. At the point it came in, the council had a land supply. So during the course of the application, we now can't demonstrate a land supply, and just as we were going through the nutrient credit process on this application, we got an appeal decision back which actually indicated a much more stringent interpretation of policy 7.5 than perhaps we had initially been taking with regard to the relationship with the development boundary. So for this particular proposal, as you can see, it's directly adjacent to existing dwellings. following the road down to the south along Woodbastwick Road here in Blowfield Heath. There is a GNLP housing allocation located in this parcel of land here, but the GNLP process didn't make any amendments to the development boundaries when it was put through. So the development boundary actually remains up in the top here, even though the built form of the settlement very much extends down towards the south, both through existing development and through that allocation. So the reason for reporting it back to committee is, technically, as I stand, I now can't say that it directly accords with policy 7.5 because of where the settlement boundary is. However, overall, we still consider it to be acceptable, being mindful of the context of the 5-year land supply position as well within that. So I'll primarily go through the policy 7.5 considerations, because that's broadly how the scheme has been designed and assessed up until a couple of weeks ago. I will just conclude with a little summary of what I would do in a tilted balance scenario purely under land supply, just to confirm that that would formulate the same outcome in terms of a recommendation on the application as well. So, as I said, it's directly adjacent to existing development on the west side of Woodbastwick Road here. So the red line includes 3 plots. It does extend towards down to the south, just to enable the visibility displays to be incorporated in and highway improvements. So there's some further hedge removal required. So some concerns were raised during the course of the application, particularly about highway safety, both in relation to speeding along Woodbastwick Road and the junction with Hall Road down to the south here. There were also a few concerns raised by the neighbour in terms of impact of the size of dwellings on that property, and then again on flooding within the highway down on the junction here, which is an identified problem in the neighbourhood plan. So to work through those individually when looking at this particular plan, the local highway authority have come back and recommended a series of conditions to help both mitigate the impact of this development, and I think actually those, in doing so, it will make an overall improvement to the highway safety of Woodbastwick Road in this area. So it is proposed to extend the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit further to the south, so there's a condition requiring the relevant traffic regulation order to be made for that. The final location is to be determined in terms of safety, because it's a village gateway sign, so we just need to make sure it doesn't sit within the visibility space of the junctions. The footpath outside the development is also going to be, currently it's a trod path that was provided by a development to the south. Out along the frontage here, that's going to be widened and formalised to a proper footpath, 1.8 metres. And the local highway authority are also of the opinion that actually extending the housing down with individual driveways will have the impact on bringing a more sort of urban feel to it and naturally slow traffic down, because it'll feel like you're entering a residential area as you get to it, with the combination of the footpaths and the dwellings. Obviously, the current speed limit sign, to acknowledge, people probably don't necessarily slow down directly at the sign, so moving it further south again will give a longer distance to slow down before you reach the access point to the commercial area across the road as well. So I think in terms of highways, it really does what it needs to do in terms of the potential impact there. With regard to the flooding, there is no surface water flood risk indicated within the site. It's all down at the junction. So the development will be required to not increase the risk of flooding as per its requirement in terms of sustainable drainage systems that will come in by condition. But there's nothing that this development could do to aid the existing situation on that road. There may be a very minor knock-on effect of less field runoff because it will be caught by the drainage systems of the new dwellings, but that's probably not a significant factor. In relation to the neighbouring dwelling, I'll just move on a couple of slides. So there was some concern about potential overshadowing, overlooking impacts and character of the street scene. Obviously, this plan is indicative. They'll be self-build. They'll come in with individual designs and reserve matters at the time. So the interaction between plot 3 here and that neighbouring dwelling will be considered at reserved matters stage in terms of ensuring that that it won't impact in terms of amenity. In terms of plot size, the proposed plots are broadly consistent with the size of the plots all the way up the street. It's very much in accordance with what policy 7.5 aims for in terms of continuing character along the street scene. Next door there is a pair of semi-detached dwellings, so they will, obviously in terms of size of the dwellings, they're slightly smaller. But actually when you look at the overall plot sizes, they're still quite large plots for those dwellings, so they're not any significant difference with what's being proposed here. And the conclusion for that is that what's being proposed is very much in character with the street scene along that street. So to just give a bit of context about the area, I think the largest impact is going to be the removal of the frontage hedge, which is required for provision of the footpath and highway safety along there, along with the access points. So the application boundary is sufficient to provide landscaping to mitigate for that within the development in terms of side and rear boundaries. There may be some opportunities when the landscaping schemes are submitted along the front boundaries as well, subject to making sure highway safety elements are complied with. So this is a view from inside the site, so the other side of the hedge from Wood Bastwick Road. So this would be plot 3, and then the other 2 plots would extend further south. As you can see, the field's quite open behind, so those rear and side boundaries will be fairly important in terms of mitigating the landscape impact, but relevant conditions are placed on there for when the detailed designs come in to secure that. This is a view looking out of the existing field boundary, so again, where we're adjacent to the existing residential, you can see the entrance to the commercial premises opposite across the road. And then looking to the south down Wood Bastwick Road, you can see the transition here between the formal footpath and the more trod path-like surface, so that will be extended further south, as will these the change in speed limit here. As I mentioned earlier, you can see the proximity of that change to the existing access point, so that distance will increase. And again, looking north from the site back towards Blowfield Heath itself, that footpath is continuous all the way back up into the village. And then some street scene images, so these are the dwellings immediately next door, and then there's quite a mix of different dwelling types as you progress up the road, but all on fairly consistent plot sizes. And then again, walking further south, so roughly where the end of the last 3 plots is going to be. And then this is the junction with Hall Road that's mentioned. So the speed limit will be much closer to this junction, but it won't come all the way down this far. And then this is just a view across Hall Road. So one of the viewpoints where you'll see the development from behind across the open field. So this is the last house on the row. So they'll sit kind of coming down in this area. So again, that's where the landscaping plans will pick up the rear and side boundaries to just mitigate that view. But the wider view from there, you see the rear of all the properties going up Wood Bastwick Road, further up anyway. And then a quick image further up. So these are some of the newer houses on Wood Bastwick Road, which filled a gap between Blowfield Heath and the houses further south. And these are kind of larger detached properties fronting the street, probably fairly similar to what we might see coming forward in the current scheme. Again, consistent plot sizes and style of development with the footpath out the front. Those ones were just up to the north here. So in terms of 7.5, if we were still doing it under that, then it's 3 self-built dwellings, consistent with the character and appearance of the area, no significant impact on landscape. Relevant conditions have been put on still with regard to self-build delivery and the design of each individual house. If I was to do it under the tilted balance, obviously as I've highlighted in terms of any harms, really the only minor one there is the removal of the hedgerow and a slight highway impact. the delivery of 3 dwellings, particularly self-build dwellings, in a position where we don't have any land supply would be sufficient benefit within that to justify recommending approval. Other elements such as highways, drainage, flood risk would all come out as a neutral in that balance, as no significant impact has been identified. So essentially, it would be a positive weight of new housing overriding the loss of hedgerow and that sort of thing in terms of a tilted balance. So I'm still satisfied that the recommendation to committee would be the same if I'd written the report in that way. So overall, the conclusion is it's considered acceptable, and the recommendation is for approval with conditions.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions for Peter?
Please. Thank you, Peter, for your information there. With regard to slide 16, where that red line goes right down to the next road, further down with Bestwick Road, does that mean that all that hedgerow has got to go? Does it necessarily go all the way down there? Thank you. Shame to lose hedgerow.
Yeah, I think we always try and not lose hedgerow. I think unfortunately it's normally highway matters that end up doing it, because in terms of widening footpaths and moving the speed limit and visibility displays, that's the driver. I think if we could keep it, we would, but I think it's not possible in this case.
Paul.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of removing hedgerow, though, you're going to be putting a hedge around the side of the end one and along the back. So there is an element of replanting of hedges?
Yes, that's the intention. So obviously the detail of that will be drawn out through the landscaping condition and the detailed reserve matters. But that's the intention, is to replace it, at least part of it, doing through that method. As I said, there may be some opportunity to get some along the front boundaries, subject to the detailed design in terms of the access, visibility and things as well, just to sort of soften the street scene once we see those reserve matters applications come in.
Again, a supplementary one. The boundary between the last house and the first of the new houses, is anything special going to go along there just to separate these out, or is it just a plan to be a new fence or another little 6-foot boundary or something? What was going to happen there?
Yeah, at the moment the site plan shows it abutting that existing dwelling. So my assumption would be, we can double check obviously, that the existing boundary treatment for that dwelling would remain. If I go back up in the photos, it's reasonably substantial. So obviously they've got what looks like 2 metre high fencing already along there that's got covered in vegetation in certain places. So I think it would be preferred for the boundaries to directly abut each other in terms of secure by design principles, because you don't want a sort of alley for people to get down between boundaries if you can help it. But again, if the reserve matters came in and an enhancement was identified in that process, it could be completed through that.
Okay, I'm going to call the agent, Tom Mays. If you'd like to come to the front, please. You need to press the right-hand button to start, and then you have 5 minutes. Okay.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair, members of the committee and officers, for allowing me to speak in support of this application today. This small sustainable site located to the west of Woodbastwick Road, immediately adjacent to existing dwellings along the western side of the road. A Norfolk County Council compliant footpath was installed in late 2023 in relation to a 9-dwelling bungalow development off Hall Road to enable residents to access day-to-day services within the village. This small site directly benefits from this footpath being directly outside the frontage of the site, allowing future residents easy and safe continuous pedestrian access into the heart of the village. Therefore, this site complies with the central and overriding objective of the NPPF, providing for sustainable development, which is the golden thread which runs through the entire framework and indeed is endorsed within the new NPPF produced on the 12th of December 2024, which looks to direct growth towards sustainable locations. The site abuts the last dwelling on the western side of the village of Blowfield Heath to the south, and therefore this small scheme of self-built dwellings provides for a natural small extension to the continuous built form along that stretch of road, mirroring the built form of the Blowfield Business Centre, which lies on the eastern side of Woodbaswick Road. As the planning officer's report has confirmed, it doesn't lie immediately adjacent to the development boundary on the western side because the land that was available in that location was built upon approximately 8 years ago, when Broadland District Council again didn't have a 5-year land supply in place, and therefore this is the only next logical location for development, given that there is no further land available adjacent to the previous and now existing development boundary. As well as having the ability for safe access to the village via the recently constructed footpath, this site will provide for 3 self-built plots extending to approximately 1/4 of an acre each, which will allow for reasonable sized dwellings, either bungalows or 2 storeys, to be constructed on site to the owner's reasonable specifications throughout the reserved matters applications once the plots have been sold. The committee will be familiar with self-built dwellings and their significant and growing importance of allowing those wishing to build their own home instead of buying a home constructed by one of the larger developers, and the wider choice that this provides to the housing market. The MPPF under paragraph 63 requires councils to plan for those wishing to build their own homes, and as the planning officer states, provides a significant justification for the site's approval. The new GNLP adopted in 2024 also supports self-built dwellings through larger sites or more closely linked to this case, as the planning officer states policy 7.5. The planning officer has stated whilst the site doesn't meet the technical criteria of the wording of that policy due to circumstances on the ground which has superseded the development boundary, this site is nonetheless entirely logical in its form and character and provides for a natural linear extension to the village of Blowfield Heath, which provides for a multitude of benefits if permitted, and therefore, as the planning officer states, conforms to policy 7.5. The applicant has purchased credits from the Norfolk Environmental Credits Limited, the council's JVC company, to mitigate the effects of nutrient neutrality, and a credit certificate has been produced, which means that this site is now fully deliverable to assist with the housing shortage and the lack of the 5-year land supply in the Broadland District Council area. When the council cannot achieve their required 5-year land supply, sites should be considered on the benefits versus harms as per paragraph 11D of the NPPF. In this instance, the site has a number of benefits, including a small self-build scheme in a highly sustainable location, a recently constructed footpath to Norfolk County Council standards, a small site which finds favour of the NPPF, which will be built out quickly. There is known local demand for these plots, which will deliver development. The removal and replacement of the existing 30-mile-an-hour signs to encapsulate the development will reduce driver speed entering the village from the south. The site will benefit the local building supply chain due to the building materials required and labour in constructing the dwellings on behalf of the owners. I hope that I've been able to demonstrate to the Planning Committee today that the cumulative benefits of this small self-built scheme, which conforms to the spirit of Policy 7.5 of the GNLP, should be approved. Moreover, given the lack of 5-year land supply confirmed by Broadland District Council, if the tilted balance of the MPPF were to be applied as a secondary test for approval, albeit the Planning Officer states that it's considered to apply with Policy 7.5 anyway, the cumulative benefits of the scheme far outweigh any identified harm, and with the site being nutrient neutral through the purchase of credits, this site will deliver much needed housing development where many other sites are currently unavailable to build. There are no other
Mr. Mayes, you've had your 5 minutes, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. Any questions for the agent?
Thank you. Just a couple from me. Firstly, can you confirm what you're going to be doing with the fence at the end of the last plot? Is that going to be a new fence along there? Just because that last bit of fence is quite low.
Boundary treatment will be determined by the reserve matters application for that particular plot. So when the plot applies to the council for the reserve matters,
okay,
they
That's fair enough. And then just another one, just as a thought that comes into my head. I'm assuming these are they all going to be air source heat pumps, and that is also reserved matters, is it? All that sort of stuff. We can't specify that. Okay, all right.
Thank you. If you'd like to return to your seat, Mr. Mayers, please. We have Councillor Newstead. If you'd like to come to the table, please. Paul, you have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to amplify on a couple of points that Peter mentioned earlier. One is the flood risk. We have a major flood risk issue just north of this site on Bluefield Corner Road. My experience of being in the parish here for about 30 years is that this is a relatively safe and unaffected area for flood risk, so I'm supporting it from that point of view. But more importantly is the issue of speeding. Because we have hedgerows running up to the Bluefield Business Park, we've clocked cars doing in excess of 80 miles an hour going along that part of the road. And just to the north is a primary school and a shopping area. So I've been working with NCC Highways to see how we can reduce that speed risk. And they advised me very strongly that having a built environment with moved speed limit signs further south from the centre will have a direct and significant impact on the speeding of that area. So as a parish council member and a ward councillor, I'm very much in favour of this from a safety point of view. I'll leave it to you gentlemen and ladies to decide on the merits of the actual building, but I'm wholeheartedly in support of this and would ask you to think favourably about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to return to your seat. Right, who would like to start discussion? Oliver.
Yes, thank you. I recognise this is actually outside the development limit of the village, and I also think it's a real shame that we're going to see loss of Grade 2 agricultural land on a greenfield site and removal of an established mature hedgerow. However, I will be supporting this application because those are not sufficient planning reasons to turn it down. I do think, as has already been said, policy 7.5 very closely applies. It is a windfall site. It does provide opportunity for self-build homes, and also we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. So both those policies are very strong reasons to approve this application. I think it's good to see the footpath access will be better. As a result, the speed limit stretch will be lengthened, and that will increase the highway safety, particularly to the south. And the only thing is, I do think it's really important that we see the drainage issues in that area addressed, and certainly not made any worse by this development. So I'm happy to approve it.
Thank you, Anna. If there's nobody else, are you all happy to go to the vote for this one? Yeah? All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous, Lucy. Thank you. I will turn to Ben for planning appeals.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's not really much to report today. We had no decisions that went through the planning committee. We've had no decisions at all from the planning inspectorate. We've had
surprise, surprise.
We've had 3 go to appeal. You'll see on the page 84 there, one at Reetham, one at Western Longville, and one at Lingwood. So we'll report back, but again, none of them were committee decisions. So that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Close the meeting at 11:35.
Just ask, what was the situation regarding?
Yeah, sorry. I thought you meant the appeal date. Yeah, the application was withdrawn before the committee.